The weekend kicked off like any other Saturday. James rolled out of bed later than usual and leaned over to kiss his wife of 17 years. She grumbled, "James, let me sleep. I can't get a break from you, whether it's night or morning, and the girls are probably already up." James replied, "You're right, they're grown now. They won't barge into our room. Let me get some rest." He slipped out of bed, threw on a robe, and made his way to the shower. As he passed by their eldest daughter Emma's room, he heard some commotion. It turned out Lily was dragging Emma out of bed, so he decided to leave them to it. After freshening up, James dressed and headed to the kitchen. His daughters, tired of waiting, were already at the table. Emma asked, "Are we having breakfast today? Aren't you hungry? We still need to get to school." James answered, "Why do you need to worry about breakfast? You girls are on New Year's vacation. You're going to Grandma's." Emma countered, "And you? Aren't you on vacation too? You have a long weekend. It's all up to Mom." James suggested, "Why don't you make your own breakfast?" Lily chimed in, "We could, but Mom won't let us. She thinks we'd ruin the pans and burn everything. All she knows how to cook is scrambled eggs." James asked, "Do you want oatmeal or semolina porridge like they have in England?" Emma replied, "Oatmeal, please." James smiled. "Or in this case, oatmeal, miss." "Daddy, we'll leave the oats for the horses," she added. James instructed, "Make sure the semolina is smooth. Done and done. Now go wash your face and brush your teeth. The porridge will be ready in 15 minutes. He quickly prepared breakfast for his daughters. Meanwhile, Rebecca emerged from the bedroom and headed to the bathroom. The girls sat down to eat, and Rebecca soon returned with her hair neatly styled. James looked at his wife, now wearing his shirt. Even after all these years, she still captivated him. He recognized her beauty. Though every man has his own idea of what's attractive. He loved her, but a significant barrier had formed between them. Rebecca took her place at the table and told the girls, "Finish your breakfast and get ready slowly. Daddy will take you to Grandma's today." Emma protested, "Mom, you promised we'd go to the ski center for a week. We've prepared our ski gear and wanted to celebrate New Year's Eve together." Rebecca replied, "Girls, life doesn't always go as planned. We'll go to the ski center for spring break when there's no more snow. Or we could go to Palmer. There's snow there year-round. Now, finish up and get ready." James wasn't thrilled about sending the kids to his mother-in-law's, especially after the mix-up about their planned trip. He sensed a growing distance in their relationship, which seemed to align with the arrival of David, the new commercial director at Rebecca's workplace. James knew Rebecca was acquainted with David from university, but hadn't mentioned him as her new boss. This troubled him, but he hoped she would resist any temptation to stray. He considered confronting David, but decided it might only worsen things with Rebecca. Nonetheless, he kept a close watch on his wife. To his knowledge, nothing had happened between them, just some light flirting. Rebecca's decision to send the children to her parents today hinted that something significant was about to unfold over the New Year's weekend, likely something she'd discuss with them. James was prepared for this conversation and had a recorder ready to capture what she might say. As the conversation began, his heart hardened, and he wiped away his tears. He saw his wife potentially threatening their family's stability. His main concern was keeping his daughters safe. He knew a difficult conversation was imminent. Nora had already warned him. What Rebecca didn't realize was that, before the talk began, James had gone to the bathroom, washed his hands, activated the recorder, and discreetly placed it in his breast pocket. He then returned to the kitchen and took a seat at the table. Rebecca was silent for a moment before she glanced at James, offered a brief smile that quickly vanished, and said with a serious tone, "James, we need to talk about something right now." Her words made it clear that this conversation wouldn't be pleasant. James tried to stay composed, looking away from his meal and asking, "Is something wrong?" Rebecca responded, "James, nothing's wrong. You know I love you. I've loved only you for years. You've been a wonderful lover, husband, and father to our girls. I want to grow old with you, maybe even die on the same day. What's holding us back? I'm a trained sociologist from our university, though only a few of us work directly in that field. Those who do use surveys and data analysis to understand societal issues, pinpoint problems, and suggest improvements. While I work in marketing and focus on marketing research, I stay informed about sociological developments." Rebecca continued, "Everything seems a bit unclear and complicated. Can you give me the gist of your question? I've been delving into the reasons behind marriage problems and want to proactively address any potential issues in our relationship, Rebecca began. What could possibly go wrong for us? We should be vigilant to avoid the common traps that can lead to a failed marriage. James replied, Rebecca, it sounds like you're getting caught up in some overblown theories from people just trying to stir up drama. I'm not buying into these sociological claims at all. What's this really about? Rebecca snorted and said, James, I'm being serious. I'm concerned about our family and the risk of us growing apart. The choices we make today might create distance between us and could eventually end our relationship. So, what do you propose we do? I'm not a sociologist, but maybe we should consider seeing a psychologist. I've been pondering this for some time and think we need a break from each other. We should explore different experiences and people. That way, when we come back together, we'll have a renewed perspective to strengthen our relationship. James asked, How long should this break last? A month? A year? Rebecca replied, No, I think a 2-week holiday would be sufficient. James questioned, Is this why the kids are going to your mom's place instead of the ski resort? We could have sent them to your parents, but I had already made plans with my mom. Rebecca responded, So you're suggesting that you and your lover invented this whole sociological theory just to get my approval for a long weekend with your lover? James was completely stunned by Rebecca's audacious suggestion. Her bold proposal was shocking, though his suspicions had prepared him for something like this. Nevertheless, her words deeply hurt him. He asked, Rebecca, I'm still unclear on what you're trying to say. Can you explain? I have no idea who you're referring to as a lover. Rebecca said, You might not like it, but you'll see that nothing will change between us. I'll ensure you're happy when we reunite. Yes, it might seem selfish, but I have my reasons. I want us to grow old together. You may not understand this now, but you will, and you'll end up apologizing. James responded, You don't even know who the lover is. I'm talking about David, the new commercial director. You had a passionate affair with him back in college, and when he got bored, he moved on. You quickly came to me, and you never mentioned that your old classmate became your boss. Rebecca countered, And you're mistaken about a lot of things. What am I wrong about? James said, You're mistaken if you think nothing will change. Everything is shifting, or rather, it already has. Rebecca asked, What's changed? James replied, Your attitude toward me and the kids has shifted. Everything in our family is changing right now. Rebecca responded, James, I love you. I don't know what you're imagining, but I still love you. I'm not sure how you'll explain this divorce to our parents, or to Emma and Lily. What will they think about their parents splitting up? James asked, Rebecca, what are you talking about? We're not getting divorced, and our parents don't need to be dragged into our personal matters. Sociology is an exact science. You don't need to force our situation into some theory you and your lover cooked up. You're complicating things, so I'll put it on hold. You take the girls, come back, and we'll figure things out. Rebecca said, James, we're not resolving anything right now. I'm simply leaving. James replied, But you can't just do this to me. Rebecca answered, I can and I will. I'm not going to follow your suggestion. My decision to divorce was spontaneous. I just decided it now. James said, But you said you'd call it off. Rebecca affirmed, Yes, I did. And then you said we'd discuss it when you got back. So, are you going to enjoy your long weekend while I drive the girls around and consult with David? At that moment, Emma came into the kitchen and said, Daddy, we're ready to go. James replied, Girls, I'll be ready in just a few minutes. James quickly dressed, grabbed his laptop and backpack, and without saying goodbye to Rebecca, went downstairs. He started the car, let it warm up, and then the girls climbed into the back seat as they set off. Rebecca watched them from the window, bewildered. James merged onto the main road cautiously, and the car remained silent. Finally, Emma broke the silence, saying, Daddy, Grandma lives on the other side of the road. James replied, I know, dear, but you were promised to stay at a ski lodge, and that's where we're heading. We'll sort out our accommodations. Emma asked, Dad, are you and Mom getting a divorce? Lily added, Why would you think that, Dad? We overheard you arguing, and I'm on your side. Aren't you, Lily? Lily confirmed, I'm on Dad's side too, but where will we live? James responded, Girls, we'll stay at my mom's house. I'll drop you off at school and pick up your books and clothes. For now, let's put these worries aside and enjoy our vacation. You deserve it." Meanwhile, Rebecca looked away from the car, pulled out her phone, and called David, who answered right away. "David, it's Rebecca. I have a problem." David asked, "No worries. I'm alone. Has your husband left yet?" Rebecca replied, "He's on his way out now. He just went to the store." "What's the situation?" David said. "He didn't react as we anticipated. He didn't buy into what I said." Rebecca responded, "I proposed the 2-week break we discussed. It turns out he's aware of our past and our connection from college. He's talking about a divorce." David replied, "That's a problem. It's going to cause a big stir. It will likely spread through the office gossip, and eventually Nora will hear about it." Rebecca asked, "Nora?" David said, "I'm not interested in divorcing my wife." "You've never really been interested in this, have you?" David's voice was cold. "Tell me, what should I do now? Is your husband back yet?" "No," Rebecca replied. "He still has to drop the girls off at my parents' place and then come back. I'm sure he'll return home and won't leave. Tell him that the temporary separation is off." "I did," Rebecca said, "but he didn't believe me. He thought I'd convince him otherwise when he returned. When will he be back?" "It should take him 3 or 4 hours," David said. "That's our window. Tell him you've made up your mind and there will be no separation. We need to let his anger settle for now and ensure this doesn't spill over into our workplace. Otherwise, it will complicate things." Rebecca ended the call, feeling a sense of relief with David's support. As she contemplated her situation, she remembered the old saying about the way to a man's heart. Deciding to avoid the hassle of cooking, she dressed up and went to a cafe. She ordered some takeout, bought a bottle of wine, and set out 2 glasses. After heating up the appetizer she'd bought in the microwave, she set up the table and turned on the TV, sinking into an armchair. Rebecca wondered if jeopardizing her family for a brief affair with an old flame was worth it. Convincing James now would be incredibly challenging, especially since she wasn't sure how much he knew about her relationship with David. Revealing that David was now her boss had been a misstep. She knew James would find out eventually, but the fact that he was already aware of her history with David complicated things. When David had reappeared in her life as the new commercial director, Rebecca had felt an unexpected pull. Despite knowing it was likely just a fling, their initial conversations had hinted at something more. David had confessed, "Rebecca, I've always had feelings for you, but I can't risk my family. Although I'm not ready to cut off contact, it must remain discreet. You're married too, aren't you?" Now 4 hours had passed, and James still hadn't returned. Rebecca decided to call her mother to check in. After a slight delay, her mother answered, "Hello, Rebecca, what's going on? We're just sitting with Grandpa having a bit of an argument." Rebecca asked, "What's the argument about?" Her mother replied, "Just the usual stuff. Grandpa wanted a drink and I refused, but he found where I hid the bottle. How are you? When will you bring the girls to visit?" Rebecca realized from the call that James hadn't arrived at her parents' place. After hanging up, she called James's parents. James's father, a retired military officer, answered the phone. "Rebecca, is that you?" he asked. "Are you looking for James and the kids?" "Yes," Rebecca replied. "He said we were getting a divorce. I'm trying to sort things out." James's father said, "He told us about the separation and then mentioned he'd be sorting things out. I didn't believe him at first. I thought he'd come home and you'd sort it out." Rebecca said, "James didn't return home. He decided on a divorce and I didn't have any plans. He knows about David, and when I suggested a separation, he took it as a sign to leave." James's father responded, "That's not right. James knows about your affair, and he's upset. I advised him to confront you directly. He didn't want to. He has daughters who are on his side. Where did he go?" Rebecca replied, "He didn't say where he was going. We were so upset that we didn't even ask." James's father continued, "If he calls, tell him he misunderstood everything. I did my best for our family, but now I realize I've done something wrong. I don't know my daughter anymore. After all these years, we never thought of separation, even in the toughest times. Who put these absurd thoughts in your head? If you're so set on being with someone else, just leave. Don't drag everyone else into this. James will move on and be fine. He's not old or unattractive, and the girls will be okay with him." Rebecca said, "There will be no divorce, that's your opinion. I know my son better than you do. I'll explain everything to him, and he'll realize he's wrong. She hung up and dialed David's number again. This time a woman answered. Hello, I'm looking for David, Rebecca said. The woman replied, Who are you? My name is Rebecca, we work together. Oh, I know who you are, the woman said. Let me tell you, I kicked him out. Don't try to call him. He doesn't have a phone anymore. I've moved to 2 different cities because of this cheater and womanizer, but I'm not leaving this new place. Rebecca was taken aback. Where's David? Rebecca's voice was tight with frustration. How should I know? The woman on the phone snapped. I kicked him out. Maybe he's at your place. He doesn't know where I live, Rebecca said. Why would he be at my place? He knows everything, including your address, the woman said. He's with you at work. But he wasn't the only one involved. David had plans intending to meet everyone while I was away on vacation. Except I wasn't going anywhere. James and the girls were headed to a ski resort out of town. David knew some staff there and had called ahead. Ryan, a former classmate, is now the director of the base. James asked him to accommodate them for their winter vacation. Ryan's voice echoed over the phone. James, anything for you. A house for 3? That's a dream come true. I've got a company waiver and 3 cabins available. I'll reserve one for you. Just a small request. If anyone calls asking about you, don't confirm that you're here with your daughters. Of course, Ryan said. When are you arriving? We're about an hour and a half away, James replied. I can't drive too fast. The roads are slippery. I'll have everything ready for you, Ryan assured. Just tell them you're here to see Ryan, and they'll direct you. An hour and a half later, James and the girls arrived at the ski lodge. They informed the gatekeeper they were there to meet Ryan and were directed to the parking lot near the lodge. James parked the car, and they gathered their belongings before entering the cabin. Ryan greeted them at the table, saying, Hurry up, the food's getting cold. Let my girls freshen up first, James said. They need to wash their hands and explore a bit. There are 2 bedrooms upstairs and 1 on the ground floor. Emma and Lily took their things and headed upstairs. They quickly changed into their tracksuits and found the room satisfactory. Where's Rebecca? Ryan asked. Why hasn't she come? That's a separate story, James replied. I'll explain later. Let's toast to our meeting. They raised their glasses and reminisced, occasionally interrupted by questions from James's daughters. Eventually, Lily asked about other activities at the lodge. There's a dance party happening now, Ryan said. You didn't bring anything for dancing? There's no dress code, Ryan assured them. You can go as you are. I'll send someone to take you there. A staff member arrived shortly to escort Emma and Lily to the party. After they left, Ryan turned to James. So what's the story with your wife? She suggested a 2-week separation to strengthen our marriage, James said. But I decided it was a ruse. We're getting a divorce. Why's that? Ryan asked. Remember when I used to date her? There were rumors she was seeing someone else. Yeah, I heard rumors, but nothing concrete, Ryan said. Now this guy from out of town shows up and becomes the commercial director at Rebecca's workplace. They started an emotional affair, which I didn't realize at first. His wife, Nora, decided to leave him and told me everything. Did she cheat on you? Ryan asked. No, James said. She said the separation was to help our marriage, but I saw it as a manipulation. Sociology is just a bunch of theories from people who don't understand society. Sounds like they made those theories up for you, Ryan said. So what now? I need to figure out the next steps, James said. A group of lawyers is coming here tomorrow. They have an office downtown. I'll get their advice. Pour a drink, Ryan said. Emma and Lily returned from the dance around 11 p.m. A ski center staff member had taken good care of them and brought them back to the lodge. James prepared a late supper for the girls, and they ate together before heading to their rooms. Sitting alone on his bed, James struggled to hold back tears. The day had been overwhelming, and he couldn't shake off the pain from Rebecca's actions. He turned on a tape recorder, replaying a recording to reassure himself that his decision to leave was the right one. Rebecca had never waited for him, and she had no idea where he had taken their daughters. James recalled his promise to his children about the ski trip and suspected that reservations had been made in advance. Meanwhile, Rebecca powered up the computer James used but found no useful information. She couldn't locate any details about the ski lodges he might have researched. The next morning, James woke to a knock on his door. "Come in," he called. His daughters burst into the room, full of excitement. "Daddy, wake up, let's have breakfast and go skiing. And there's an ice skating rink here." "Yes," James said, smiling. "Let's get ready. We'll go to the cafe for breakfast." They quickly got dressed and headed to the cafe to start their day. After changing into their ski attire, James and the girls rented skis and took the ski lift up the mountain. They spent the morning enjoying the slopes before heading back to the cafe for lunch. As they were changing, they ran into Ryan and his wife. Ryan approached them with a friendly smile. "The company I mentioned has arrived, including a divorce specialist. Let's meet in my office later. I've got a computer and printer ready for all the paperwork you'll need. Tonight, my wife and her sister are taking the girls to the ice rink. If you're up for it, we'll join them after dinner for some dancing. Don't forget, tomorrow is New Year's Eve, so we'll need to prep for the festivities." After lunch, Ivan and James made their way to Ryan's office. A lawyer arrived promptly, and they began discussing the situation. Anna, the lawyer, explained the legal landscape to James, who was unfamiliar with it. She advised him to avoid making hasty decisions about their apartment. "Remember," Anna said, "your girls will grow up and eventually need their own space. If you move into the apartment with them now, it could complicate things if a new partner comes into the picture. Consider proposing a partition. First, explain to your wife that you'll be filing for divorce. The paperwork can wait. Courts have holiday breaks too. I'll prepare it on my laptop and we can print it later. You can also hire me to represent you in court if you prefer." "I'd like that option," James replied. The New Year's Eve celebration at the ski lodge was lively, with music, dancing, and festivities. James and his daughters joined Ryan, his wife, her sister, and a group of lawyers for the celebration. Other vacationers participated, adding to the vibrant atmosphere. After the main hall festivities, James and his daughters returned to their cabin, exhausted but content. The following days continued with skiing, ice skating, and dancing. Ryan checked in with James each evening. "How are you holding up?" he asked. James responded, "Apart from the daytime fun, I've shed a lot of tears at night. But today, I feel more prepared for what's ahead than ever." When the time came for James and his daughters to return home, they packed up and made a stop at the mall for groceries before heading back as darkness fell. Once home, Emma and Lily immediately began rearranging their rooms, with Lily moving her things into Emma's room. Rebecca entered and asked, "What are you two doing?" "We're turning Lily's room into Dad's room and sharing one room," Emma explained. Rebecca frowned. "Why?" "That's what Dad said," Lily replied. Rebecca was dissatisfied with the decision and warned, "I won't tolerate any boyfriends in the house. You can hang out anywhere you want. Just so you know, I'm filing for divorce." With the room changes complete, the girls got ready for school. James started preparing dinner and breakfast for the following morning. Rebecca walked in and tried to initiate a conversation, but James remained unresponsive. She then entered the girls' room and asked if they wanted to talk to her. The girls said they hadn't missed her, and James instructed them to stay out of his way. For the rest of the week, James, Emma, and Lily lived separately from Rebecca. James locked the doors to their rooms and cooked for himself and his daughters while ignoring Rebecca's presence. On Friday evening, a young woman arrived with a registered letter for Rebecca, a summons and statement of claim. After reading it, Rebecca rushed into the kitchen in tears, asking James why he wanted a divorce and hoping things could still be worked out. James advised her to consult a lawyer and discuss the matter with him. Rebecca mentioned David's disappearance, and James suggested she contact him for advice. Rebecca insisted she had no one else to turn to, but James remained unmoved. The girls had already eaten and retreated to their room without acknowledging Rebecca. Desperate, Rebecca continued to plead with James, declaring her love for him and their daughters. James replied, "What does love have to do with this? I loved you until I found out about your affair with David. I realized it was foolish to continue loving someone who betrayed me. You want to talk? Fine. Tell me about your weekend plans and how you intended to spend it. I haven't heard your sociological theories in a while. Enlighten me with your new stories. And what about your weekend? Did you have fun? I thought it was great that your buddy disappeared again." James finished dinner and began clearing the dishes. Hearing the clatter, Emma came into the kitchen and offered to help with the dishes. James declined and suggested she go upstairs to tidy her room. He reassured Rebecca that he would handle the dishes and iron her clothes, which were already dry. Feeling entirely ignored and sensing James' unwillingness to engage with her, Rebecca became emotional and retreated to her room. Meanwhile, James washed the dishes promptly, turned off the lights, and headed to his room. He noticed a pile of laundry he had washed during the week, waiting to be ironed. Before bed, James made his way to the kitchen and found Rebecca sitting in the darkness. "James," Rebecca said as he entered, her voice trembling, "none of this was planned. I was seeing David at university and then he suddenly disappeared. I wasn't coerced or pressured into anything. Very few people knew about our relationship, and hardly anyone knew he had ended things with me. Out of nowhere, he reappeared at our workplace. We started interacting because of work, and one day he asked me to lunch. At first, it was just lunch, nothing more. But then, something changed. He made it clear that everything had to be discreet, carefully planned to avoid our spouses finding out. I agreed, thinking it was just a fling with no future. This separation was supposed to be our first and only date. "So is that why you concocted this elaborate story?" James asked. "I didn't realize it would escalate like this, and I agreed to David's proposal. James, can't you see he was just using you? Can you really be so naive?" "It's not about that," Rebecca replied defensively. "It's been a while since you complimented me on my looks, my clothes, or my hair. But don't put all the blame on me. Just because I haven't been showering you with praise doesn't justify having an affair." "Are you saying you're willing to have an affair with anyone who compliments you?" James asked, incredulous. In the days that followed, James prepared for a meeting with child welfare officials. According to his lawyer, Anna, their opinions would carry significant weight in court, although the children's views would also be considered. James had a lot to manage in a short time, and his nights were restless, consumed by thoughts of love and betrayal. The most important person in his life had betrayed him, leaving him with a mix of anger and pain. All he wanted now was a divorce, though it felt like an insurmountable challenge. He had lost trust in Rebecca, and their marriage seemed irreparable. He also had to consider the children, who had distanced themselves from their mother. During a conversation, Rebecca argued that they should stay married for the sake of the children and try to make their marriage work. James's response was resolute. "I believe our children need to know that their parents love them unconditionally. They are not responsible for what happened. They're old enough to form their own opinions about us. I haven't spoken ill of you to them, but they've made their own judgments based on what they heard when you criticized me over our temporary separation. I'm proud of how they've understood the situation." Rebecca asked, "Do the girls hate me?" "For someone with a degree in sociology, you should understand this better," James replied. "Yes, they know about your unfaithfulness, and they're angry with you. You can try to repair your relationship with them, but remember that adolescence is a transitional phase. It's challenging to predict how you might connect with them after all that's happened." As their court date approached, Rebecca made numerous pleas and appeals, but eventually, they faced each other in the courtroom for a preliminary session. They were given time to try and reconcile their differences. When that period ended, James proposed that Rebecca sign a child custody agreement as part of their divorce, allowing the girls to live with him. "I won't sign any agreement," Rebecca declared. James warned her, "Then I'll have to bring this matter before the court. The court will hear my side, talk to the girls, and make a decision. It's unlikely to be in your favor." Rebecca retorted, "You can't be so sure. Court decisions can be appealed." "Well, good luck with that," James said. Rebecca admitted, "I know I've been foolish. I realized my actions were wrong. Please understand I love you, and I'll never have David in my life again. You've decided to replace him with someone else." "That's your choice," James replied. "It's your life. Don't try to blame me. You're a sociologist, so you should understand that. Now, if you decide to sign the agreement, it should be done in front of a notary. Generally, agreements concerning child residence do not require notarization, unlike alimony agreements, which are treated as court orders. Nonetheless, it is advisable to draft and notarize such documents." James was indifferent to Rebecca's refusal to sign, knowing it wouldn't benefit her anyway. As a result, the court's deadline for reconciliation had passed. Rebecca made desperate efforts to mend her relationship with her daughters, but they proved unsuccessful. After school, the girls attended their computer science classes and returned home with James. Following a light snack in James's room, they would settle down to complete their homework. Meanwhile, James prepared dinner and breakfast for the next day. One day, child welfare authorities visited them, interviewed the girls, inspected their room, and compiled a report. They then attended the court hearing as scheduled. James, accompanied by his daughters, addressed some questions with their lawyer. Rebecca entered the courtroom without a lawyer, having sought advice from counseling services and divorced friends, fully aware of the irreparable state of her marriage. During the trial, she answered the court's questions with simple yes or no responses. At the end of the trial, Rebecca declared her intention to relinquish her share of the apartment in favor of her daughters, providing a deed of gift. The judge noted that Rebecca had already removed her personal belongings from the apartment, with any remaining items to be cleared within a week. Rebecca requested a court recess to sign the child support agreement proposed by James. After the recess, she added, "I am willing to voluntarily pay child support to James because I understand that the court's decision may not be in my favor." James responded, "To ensure transparency regarding the child support funds, I propose that the defendant open a separate account for each of her daughters and transfer the funds there. I believe they will need this money when they come of age." The judge clarified that alimony and the division of the apartment were not part of the initial claim and would not be addressed. The court would decide on the child support agreement and the divorce. After the court recessed to deliberate, James and Rebecca left the courthouse officially divorced. The girls, excused from the courtroom after their hearing, were found sitting on a bench near a bus stop, enjoying ice cream despite the cold weather. James asked, "Girls, what are you doing out here? It's freezing." "We brought the ice cream home," they explained. "We thought it was okay to have it in the winter. It might even soothe a sore throat." James questioned why they chose age 19 as the threshold for accessing the money. The girls simply replied, "That's what we decided." Rebecca kept her promise and moved out of the apartment, relocating with her parents to care for her ailing mother. James agreed to allow her to visit her daughters once a week, although Emma and Lily were hesitant. During these visits, Rebecca spent time with her daughters at their residence. James spent a long time on his own. On New Year's Eve, he and his grown-up daughters vacationed at a ski resort, often accompanied by Ryan's wife's sister, Sophia. A relationship began to develop between James and Sophia, though James was in no hurry to commit. His primary focus remained on his daughters, whom he continued to nurture and guide. Sophia, who had no children of her own, got along well with Emma and Lily. Despite some initial jealousy, James treated Rebecca with respect, allowing her to visit the girls and maintaining a civil communication. They were no longer a couple or friends. Emma and Lily matured without causing significant difficulties. James, who surrounded his daughters with love and care, saw Sophia's presence as a positive addition to their family. Rebecca faced a challenging year. Her parents passed away, one after the other. James assisted her with the funerals, but their shared grief did not repair their relationship. Rebecca lived independently for a considerable time, with her daughters as her main social circle. Eventually, she began dating a lonely widower from a neighboring house. David, her former partner, never reappeared in town, and his whereabouts remained unknown, even to his ex-wife, Nora, who had remarried soon after their divorce.